This is Jack White with the Capital District Growth Team and another Monday morning message. This one is part two of a conversation that we began last time with the CEO of Kiwanis International, Rob Parker. Are you still there, Rob?
I am, Jack.
Good. Last time we talked about you and your job and how you came to Kiwanis and some of the challenges that you have found there and are dealing with every day. I want to talk about old and new Kiwanis today. I hear those terms splashed around, and I'm sure a lot of the people who hear this message will hear it too. What does this mean, old and new Kiwanis?
Well, actually, Jack, we don't use those terms anymore. One of the
things. What do you use?
We actually were very specific about that. When I first arrived here, I heard a lot of talk about new Kiwanis and some which always suggests that there's an old Kiwanis. I hear about good, which suggests bad, or relevant, which suggests irrelevant. And so we really kind of changed our language, and we started to talk about Kiwanis Classic as the best of what we've been over the last 93 years. So rather than look at our past and be critical of it, we want to capture the best of it. And you know, a classic is something that you take care of, that you protect, that you make sure is that you value. And so our classic model.
I think Coca-Cola found that out a few years ago when they tried to change your formula, didn't they?
They sure did, and they went right back and said, you know what, people really value our core product. And so our core product is strong, and we call that Kiwanis Classic. And that's Kiwanis the way you and I know it and experience it every day. The idea of what do you call what we're going to do next then really came out of this idea is if this is Kiwanis Classic, then what's next? You know, what are we going to do to attract the next generation? And we just started to call that Kiwanis Next. And so that's our next generation of Kiwanis, and I can tell you a little bit about it, how we would describe it, but it's still kind of in the invention stage, and like anything that's in research and development, you can describe it a little bit, but if it hasn't been invented yet, I can't give you all the detail.
Well, tell us what you can and what you feel have been successes and maybe a couple of things that didn't work out.
You bet. Our studies have shown us that our next generation is very interested. That's the great news, is they care about the environment, they care about the world. In fact, they're much more globally aware than our generations were. But so I don't think it's a matter of they're not interested. What we have found is that the meeting structure and the style in which we approach it needs to be different to attract them. It needs to be what we call meet less and do more. They're very focused on action. They're very focused on hands-on service, which is not unlike what our classic Kiwanians are, but even more so. They want to get it and get done. I call it kind of a Starbucks approach versus a full 5-course meal. They
Okay.
want to get together. They want to get together for 20 minutes for coffee, plan what they're going to do, and then go do it. And so it's a lot less meetings, and it's supported by an online structure. And what I mean by that is online communities where they do their regular communication online rather than in the traditional face-to-face meetings that we do. They still get face-to-face for social and for service, but they do most of their meetings and information sharing online.
Now, this is the online clubs that we have seen. You think that's going to extend beyond those? Is that
I think the traditional start was just that we were going to replace our regular meetings with online interaction. And I think we're finding that is not going to work for us totally.
Okay.
That the online portion is only part of it, that people have a social need and a desire to get face-to-face. And so I think we misinterpreted early on that this next generation was going to do everything online. And they're not, but they are going to use those tools.
But that's a communication tool.
Absolutely. It's nothing more than a tool. Yeah, they would.
All right, but let's get right down, as they say, where the rubber meets the road.
You bet.
I belong to a club of 70, give or take, members. Started during World War II. We're in a pretty small town. We continue to meet every week. We have very good meals and extremely good programs, and yet we are seeing a drop in our membership. We were up at 80 and 90, and we also are seeing the younger members. We bring fewer of them in, and they are tending to go out that back door pretty quick. Now, I only mention my club because I think it's typical of large numbers around.
It is, Jack.
What type of things would you do if you were president or the president-elect or officer of club of that sort now?
I would suggest two things. One is I would do the first thing, which is I call refreshing our classic model. Don't totally change it, but refresh it. And the second thing I would do is I would probably look at forming a young professionals club in the same community that would be attractive, that would be a satellite of our existing club. Those are probably two things I would think of right away. In terms of the 3 or 4 things that you can do to make your current club attractive, though, one is that we call it 4 under 40, is to go and recruit 4 members under the age of 40 and bring them all in at the same time. We found that if you bring them in 1 or 2 at a time, they just don't tend to stay. You need a critical mass.
I think we found that when we started admitting women. You'd have 1 or 2 sitting there and they felt awfully lonesome.
Absolutely. So at least 4. I'd say 4 to 6, but 4 under 40. And then I would listen to them. I would ask them to analyze your meeting, tell them what they like and what they don't like. And if there's some things that they don't like that are keeping them from coming, you have to make a hard decision about, is it worth it enough to keep doing it? Because we're real resistant to change, most of us. But I would say listening to your members is probably the most important thing, especially those under the age of 40.
Well, if you're an every week club, from your perspective, should you try to cut back on your meetings and try to use some of those weeks for either social or service projects?
We've had a lot of success with people who have substituted a social hour for one of their meetings, or a dinner. If they're normally a lunch club, that once a month, instead of that meeting, they're going to do something more social. But I wouldn't say that you have to change it. I think maybe being a little more careful about how you enforce your attendance requirements so that people don't feel like they have to be there every week or they can't be involved. So I would say being a little bit more flexible with that is probably the key.
Okay. As you say, this is a work in progress, but it sounds like you are working at it. Rob Parker, we thank you so much for the time you spent with us in the Capital District and beyond, because these messages do get out beyond our district. And we'll look forward to working with you in Nashville and at the International Convention upcoming and over the next few years.
Well, Jack, I do want to say thank you to your leaders. There's no way this happens without our volunteer leaders, and you've got some great ones in the Capital District, so thank you.
Thanks. Well, the Capital District Growth Team, this is Jack White. Thank you for listening.